Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Royal Nerd Gaming. I am your host, the Royal Nerd, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Let's talk about variants. One of the selling points of Marvel Snap is the collection aspect, but just because you've unlocked a card doesn't mean you're done collecting. For every card, there is at least one variant of that card, a version of the character in a different outfit or a different art style. The sheer amount of artwork in this game is mind-boggling. I mean, there's a couple hundred cards at this point, some of which have over a dozen variants, totaling almost 1,000 individual pieces of artwork. And over the course of this series, I'm going to rank every single one of them on a tier list. So let's get started. Quick disclaimer, this is of course just my opinion. If you love a variant that I don't, or don't like a variant that I do like, that's totally fine. Let me know in the comments what your favorites are. Just, please be kind to each other and me. Now we'll be going in order of energy cost, so we start of course with Wasp. This is gonna be the setup. I'll be over here, card will be over there. This is Wasp's base card art. Every card comes with a base card, and they're usually pretty good, but could be cooler, so that you're encouraged to buy the really cool variants from the shop. And I think that's exactly what this does. It's a nice looking card. The background is a very nice shade. I really like that color. And it contrasts against her well so that she's really like popping out of the frame. She's the focal point. The blur from her wings moving really fast and her pose are very dynamic. Overall, I really like it. It's one that I wouldn't mind using for like a good period of time until I could find a cooler variant that I really like. But it's a great card to start off with, and it's gonna go right into B tier. A quick summary of the tier list breakdown. B is not bad by any means, nor is D for that matter. B does not mean that I hate a variant, it just means that it's not for me. C tier are the variants that I could maybe see somebody else using, but still aren't my favorite. B tier is kind of middle of the road, a really solid variant, one that I would use until I got one that I really loved. A tier is where things start to get really good, and these are the variants that I would use long term and really want to get my hands on. And S tier are my favorite variants in the game, the ones that I would like buy in my shop as soon as I saw them. Now, with that out of the way, let's move on to the next variant. Our first pixel variant. There are some people who love the pixel variants, and I know there are some people who really don't like the pixel variants. Yeah, they're not for me, generally speaking. There are a couple that I think are really good and would give like a pretty high rating to. This is not one of them. I don't love the use of the blue and yellow here. I know that is the colors of one of Wasp's outfits, but I don't feel like it meshes well here. I can't really tell the details of her suit, and I get a little confused by her pose. I'm not really sure what she's trying to do. This one doesn't do it for me, so it gets a D tier. Now, this is the transformed Wasp, and I think the idea is that she's transforming into an actual wasp. Yeah, that freaks me right out. It's a little creepy to look at. I think the art is good and does what it's trying to do, and the colors are very vibrant, but wouldn't want to look at it for like a long period of time. I'm gonna go ahead and put that one into C tier. Now, this variant, I actually really enjoy. The kind of like pinkish red color pops quite nicely, and putting her on a snowy background really lets her stand out. The snowflakes being as big as they are also demonstrate her power, which is kind of cool. It shows how small she is. I don't need a card to like demonstrate the character's powers, but if it does, that's pretty cool. I really like this variant. I'm gonna give it an A tier. Now we come to our first Dan Hip variant. There's gonna be a lot of these, and I have to admit, I love Dan Hip. There's a little bit of bias here. He makes some of my favorite variants in the game. This is my favorite Wasp variant. This is kinda how I picture Wasp in my head, and he's captured it perfectly in his art style. While I don't usually love the blue and the yellow suit, I think it's a hard color combination to make work. Dan Hip managed to make it work. I really love it here. All of it just looks really nice together, and that's why this is gonna be our first S tier. Now we get into the steampunk variants. There's a few of these, and some of them I really like. This isn't one of them. I don't know, I think it's something about the gilded armor, and she kind of fades into the background for me. The color of the background and the color of the armor isn't distinct enough to make her stand out. It's not my favorite. I probably wouldn't even use it over the base art, so I'm gonna give this one a C tier. Now this one has some great colors. I really like the colors on this one. I think what I'm figuring out here is that I like Wasp's black and red suit a little bit more than the yellow. Putting her on the comic page is very fun, but making it kind of that washed out green while she's got the bright red, those are complementary colors, I think. I'm not an expert on art. I have no credentials to be judging these things, but hey, I liked this. I'm gonna give it an A tier. And I think that's all our variants for Wasp. There you go, that's the tier list. Now we're going to be moving on to our next card, and I'll just be adding more variants to this tier list until I've filled out the whole thing, and then maybe we'll call it a day there. So, on to Yellowjacket. Now, Yellowjacket's base card art does a lot of the same things for me that Wasp's does. It shows off the character, it's got that kind of classic comic feel to it, which is really nice. And the contrast is good, he pops out, he's a little bit more menacing, like he's attacking me, because he's a villain, unlike Wasp, who's a friendly hero, you know what I mean? It does the job, so that's why it's gonna get a B tier. I don't just automatically throw every base card art into B tier. Some I like more, some I like less, but a lot of them end up around that area just because it is the base card art. Anyway, on to the next one. Pixel Yellowjacket. Yeah, I don't like this pixel either. I think that one of the issues I have with the pixels is it can be hard to tell what's happening, and I can see that they're trying to go for, like, him running, but it does just kind of end up looking like he's only got one leg. I can't really keep track of his little pincer things separately from his arms. It all just kind of muddles together for me, so this one is also going to get a D tier. Now, this variant is very cool. This pose that he's in is kind of giving me anime vibes. He's like dodging to the side to evade an attack as he counterattacks with his little lasers, and the background being as vibrant as it is really catches the eye. This is an awesome Yellowjacket variant. This one's going straight to S tier. Another great Yellowjacket variant. I think I actually like this one a little bit better than the other one. I think my favorite variants are the ones that go for that kind of like shiny, realistic look. I can really appreciate all the details in his armor here, and the glowing parts kind of looking honeycomb. Like, what a good detail that you wouldn't be able to get from one of the less realistic pieces of art. I love this variant. This is also an S tier for me. Yellowjacket has a steampunk variant as well, and I think I like this one better than Wasp's. I think the sort of golded, gilded armor works better for Yellowjacket than it does for Wasp in my brain. Or at least I like better how it's done here. The background isn't the same sort of color as his armor, so he can pop out and look like he's jumping towards me. It's still not my favorite Yellowjacket variant, but it's gonna get a solid B tier. And I think that's it for Yellowjacket. Not that many variants for him. So we're gonna move right along to the Hood. Let me just start off by saying that the Hood is a character I know nothing about, and that happens in Marvel Snap sometimes. They'll introduce new characters and I'll be like, wow, who is that? And that is very much the case here. I imagine his powers have something to do with demons, since he summons demons, or something to do with guns, because he's usually pictured with 2 guns that he's firing, which looks super cool. And if I had to make a guess, I'd say that he's usually wearing a hood. Seems to be a big deal for him. He did name himself after it. But, like, I get it. That's a good-looking hood. That is a cool hood, with his face kind of in shadow and his eyes glowing. I really like this base card art. This is going to be the first base card art that I give an A tier. Now, the Hood's pixel version, I think, does a lot of the same things that the base card art does. The Hood is kinda the focal point, flowing around him, a nice bright red, shadowing his face just a little bit. This is actually a really cool pixel variant. I don't think I like it as much as the base card art, but I'm gonna give this one a solid B tier. I could see someone really wanting to use that if they really like the pixel art. That's a good one. Now this variant, I think, is pretty popular. I see a lot of people using this one, and for good reason. It's very cool. The, glowing holy light coming out of this giant golden eye behind him, as he stands kinda heroically, guns at his side in front of it, but the front of him is more in shadow because the light's coming from behind him. It's a very good card. It's not my favorite Hood variant, but it is definitely an A tier. Now there's a few names that you'll see pop up quite a few times, like Dan Hipp. Some artists just end up doing more art for the game than others, and Luca Claretti is a name that I see pretty often. He makes some art that I really like, but this isn't one of them. I think it's something to do with his face here. I like it when his face is shadowed. He seems like a mysterious character. There's a lot more detail in the face here, and I don't love the detail that I'm seeing. I still think it's good art, but it's just not for me, so I'm gonna give it a C tier. Oh, the chibi variants. If I had to pick a few variants that aren't my favorite, it would be the pixels, the babies, and the chibis. I like my characters to look cool usually, and I find that those versions of the card don't usually look as cool, but I actually don't mind this hood. I mean, they've kept his intimidating glowing eyes, and his hood is in tatters, and his guns look way cooler here than they do in any other variant. Usually they're just like 2 pistols, but those are like miniature flamethrowers, I don't know. I actually quite enjoy this chibi hood, believe it or not. I'm gonna give it a B tier. I love the noir variants. They're some of my favorite in the entire game. Taking a bunch of characters into old-timey settings and putting them in suits and ties just seems to vibe with me for some reason. Yeah, I like this hood variant. It's one of my favorites. This is the one I use. This is an S tier. I know I've already put him in the tier list, but I just wanted to say, I really like how this variant utilizes the hood flowing out bright red while the rest of him is in darker clothing. His pose feeling like it's looking down on the city as he prepares to jump into battle. It gives off kind of Batman vibes. Wrong universe, I know, but Batman's cool. And this variant is cool. It's cool. It's just cool. I'm gonna need a new adjective soon. I can't keep saying cool. I'm resisting the urge to call this variant cool. But it's like really cool. Take how good the tattered cape looked from the chibi variant and put it into a variant that's actually trying to be very dark and gritty and mysterious and match the hood's aesthetic. That's what this is. As he stands solemnly in front of a graveyard. I mean, it's cool. I think I like this one better than the noir one even. I don't know, it's very close. This one is also an S tier. And I think that wraps up the hood, so let's move on to Sunspot. In terms of base card art, I think that this one does a little bit more in terms of demonstrating his powers with the cool lighting flowing around him and the sunspots popping around everywhere. But I like the background less than some of the other base cards, and I want to like it more, the cool flowy golden lights surrounding him. But overall I feel like they're just kind of uninteresting, and that makes the rest of the card a little less interesting. It doesn't do enough wrong to land in the C tier, but it doesn't quite do enough to get it up to the A tier. Just like the other cards, it goes in the B tier. I realize that you can't see that because I am blocking this half of the tier list, so from here on out, when we're doing tier list things, I'll be down here. Hi. If I thought the last background wasn't doing much for me, this one's doing even less. It's just blue. It's blue. There it is. Now as for Sunspot himself, I think he's actually portrayed pretty well here. They've even managed to show off some of his powers with the black and yellow making up the sunspots around him, and I can tell what all the pieces of him are, which is a huge plus when it comes to pixel variants. I like it better than some pixels, but I still don't love it, so it gets itself a C tier. Listen, this variant is good. It's really good. I can see why so many people use it. The art is wild and really well done, but it really creeps me out. I'm worried about him. I am concerned for his well-being. What is happening to him? Like I said, I don't have a good grasp of his powers, but are they hurting him here? What is happening to his teeth? Is his head exploding? These are not questions I had before, but the questions I have now. It's a freaky variant. A good freaky. It gets an A tier, but I probably wouldn't use this one, but I can appreciate how good it is. Every time I see this variant, I wish I'd bought it when the bundle was available. This is great. I mean, I assume Sunspot's got something to do with being hot like the sun, so using the winter vacation setting to let him create kind of his own personal sauna in the little rubber ducky, he looks happy, he looks comfortable, unlike the last card. It's just a fun concept that's executed so well. It's an S tier. Another Luca Claretti variant. I like this one better than the hoods. I really like how he did Sunspot's hair. Is it hair on fire? Just the kind of flaming nature of his head? I think it's well portrayed. And him running across the surface of a sun? That's awesome. But it is also my hang-up with this card. I used this variant for quite a while, and what always bugged me about it a little bit is when it's small and in my hand in-game, it doesn't stand out like I want it to. With his outfit being primarily yellowy-orange and the sun being primarily yellowy-orange, from the chest down, he just blends in a little bit too much for my liking. Still, a good variant that I could totally see people using. It gets itself a B tier. Another recurring artist, back to Dan Hip. I like this Dan Hip a lot. I think that his suit color, like that yellow that he's chosen, and the way that he's made his face just like completely black, except for his features shining through, I think is very cool. But I like how he did the hair, fiery hair, less than like Luca Claretti's, for example, and the posing just feels a little bit awkward to me. Like, the proportions are maybe just a teeny touch off. I still really like it, but I don't love it, so it only gets an A tier. I know, only an A tier. Still, I wouldn't be unhappy to, like, get it out of a cache, you know what I mean? I just probably wouldn't pick it up in the store. When this variant showed up in my shop, I was so hyped. Not because I especially loved this variant, but because I saw that suit and tie was one of the themes. I immediately went to look up what other cards had suit and tie variants. There weren't any. It's only this one, which was devastating to discover, because I don't like this variant that much. And I want to like it so bad. This should be perfect for me. It's the suit and tie variant. But I don't like his suit that much. I don't like that his dress shirt is that shade of orange, even though that's kind of his color, when the background is such a similar shade of orange. His face looks very angry and intense, and I don't know, I'd want a suit and tie variant to be a little bit more formal, you know what I mean? I think they're trying to make it look like he's charging up, but he just looks like he's having a hard time in the bathroom. This one just isn't it. It breaks my heart, but I'm gonna give it a C tier. Now, this is one of the first variants I saw that actually showed his face somewhat human, which I didn't know that was a thing that could happen, but it's put to very good effect here. Most of the face being human, while part of it is being overtaken by the fiery, dark, sunspot nature of his powers. Again, I really don't know how his powers work, but it looks cool here. The flares kind of flaring off him. Yeah, flares flaring. It feels very much like a sun flare, which obviously is what they were going for, and feels very appropriate. This is my favorite outfit I've seen him portrayed in, with the jacket open and flowing. Overall, I love this variant. It's my favorite Sunspot variant, and so it's gonna get itself an S tier. Hey, another variant that shows off the human half of Sunspot, as well as the sun-spotted half of Sunspot. And I think this is our first variant by Rianne Gonzalez. I love her variants. Her use of color is so unique. Her cards are always so bright and nice to look at. But on the other hand, it is a chibi, and I don't usually like the chibis. But if I was gonna use a chibi, it would probably be this one. The way that she's split the card in half, and just how colorful it is, it probably wouldn't be my first choice, but it definitely gets a B tier. Now, this variant I had a hard time with. I think the concept is cool, but I really don't like the execution. Usually I actually kind of like seeing his glowing features shining out from the pitch black void that is his face, but in this case it's just kind of creepy. He just takes up the whole card. I don't know what the background is, I can't see it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just feels messy and busy. I know some people might like this one, but this one is really, really not for me. I'm gonna give it a D tier. On to Ant-Man. Oh, we get Ant-Man and Wasp in the same video. That's nice. Now, Ant-Man's base card art here is pretty good. I like the added detail of the silhouettes behind him, sort of showing him changing size as he's jumping, but it does leave him in kind of a funky pose, you know what I mean? It feels a little unnatural, a little odd to look at. But that doesn't take away from the card too much, it's just a little funny. Anyway, the card gets itself a B tier. Oh, Pixel Ant-Man. He looks so silly. And part of that's due to the cheesy costume that they've put him in. Ant-Man's more classic costume is ridiculous looking. But the detail on it is not bad, and you can tell he's kind of like running at the camera. And the pixel ants actually look quite good. See, just because it's pixel art doesn't mean that the backgrounds can't be really nice and detailed. In this case, I think I like the background better than I do Ant-Man as the focal point. It's not quite as good as the hoods, but I will give it a C tier. Now, I do notice that we are running out of space again, and I'm going to start blocking off the bottom bit here. So, I'm going to go ahead and move myself. Ah, there we go. Good? Good. Badass is not usually a word I associate with Ant-Man, but this variant makes him look badass. He's got the superhero stance, looking epically into the distance, and they've even added those silhouettes I like that show the change in size. You can really see all the intricate detail on his suit. It's just incredible with this one, so it gets itself an S tier. Our first baby variant. The baby variants are very similar to the chibi variants for me. It's just not how I really want to see those characters portrayed. I will say, I kind of like how much negative space they've left. I don't know, the details aren't what I want them to be, and it kind of feels like he's making fun of me, which I don't like. This one's gonna go right with the pixel variant in C tier. Now as we look at this variant, it might be a good time to bring up that I don't like bugs. That is a very realistic looking ant. It's a little hard to look at. But I also think this variant is really good, and sometimes forget that this isn't the base art. I think because the guys that did this variant also do some of the base art, so you can tell it's in their style. But this one is cooler than the base art. It's got those same motion lines, but now he's flying on an ant, which is very in theme, but just a little gross. Despite my hang-ups with ants, I'm not gonna take that out on the variant. It's an A tier. I was hoping we'd see a steampunk that I really like before the end of this video, but this one also isn't it. We're putting gilded armor on the ants now? That can't be comfortable. Also, I don't like how the top of Ant-Man's head is a different color of armor than the rest of his. It looks like his brain's exposed. I don't know, these first few steampunk variants have been a little underwhelming for me. This one's gonna go with Steampunk Wasp in C tier. Ha! Yes, the animal variants. Is it just me, or is Ant-Man being an ant just a little too on the nose? He's kinda cute as an ant, but yeah, I don't know. This one is just like, really? There are some animal variants that I think are really funny and really good, but for me, this one is just the C tier. And that brings us to the Fae variant for Ant-Man. I believe this is the only Fae variant in the game, and I wish there were more because I really like this. It's an action shot as he's running straight past the bullets, which are huge because he's tiny. It does everything that I want it to, and his suit is a really nice saturated red, so it's also really satisfying to look at. This one is an S tier for me. Hey, another Dan hit. I really like this one. The water droplets being so big as probably like a glass of water or something spills because he's just so small. He's done that thing again where the suit is kind of exactly how I'd imagine it, even though he's simplified it a bit for his art style, it still looks so good. My one qualm with it is that his head feels too big for his body. He feels kind of like a bobblehead, and it throws me off a little bit. Still, the colors and the design, it earns itself an A tier, just short of S tier for me. I hadn't seen this variant before. I don't know if it's released yet. He's got that same sort of black and red outfit that the Wasp had in some of her variants, and I think they would look really good together. I don't mind the helmet here. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds of the new and the old, and the sort of watercolor aesthetic that was used to color this one is just beautiful. It's not the most interesting variant there is, but the art that has gone into it is so good. It's gonna get itself an A tier. And just like that, our tier list is packed to the brim. I'm probably not gonna be able to do that in every video, but I'll always try to use up as much of the space as I can. And in this case, that meant going through 5 cards. Almost 40 variants, I think. So that seems like a good place to call it. Now, let me give you a look of the whole tier list without my face blocking the way. As I say, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun making it. I've already got the next couple of tier lists underway, so hopefully I can make more of these really soon. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye-bye for now. Have a nice day.